Hello, everyone, and welcome to LAUNCHPAD 21. I'm Judith Peterson, CMO of Cerulean Sky. And today we're sitting down with Sarah Knakmuhs, who is a seasoned senior professional in strategic communications. Sarah worked predominantly with over 20 years of experience in heavily regulated industries. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Judith. It's great to be here today.
Thanks for having Sarah, me. In your world, what types of initiatives are you seeing launch this year?
Good question. And I think as we go into 2021 in the strategic communications world, it's not about something tangible, right? It is about kind of what trends are we seeing? What are we seeing really happening as companies and entities are working through what I call transformational moments, challenging moments, moments that define them. And I think there's two big things that I would say really jump out. One is the need to operate and communicate in really a 360-degree environment. It is no longer talking to one audience group, thinking if you have something to tell your investors, they're the only people that you need to tell. You really need to think about what I call kind of connecting that Main Street, Wall Street, and DC on everything that you're communicating. So that's a big thing that I think is launching in a trend for the year. And if I was going to put a second one in there, I think it's fascinating to watch the evolving role of the CEO. We saw that happen during 2020, during the pandemic. And I think the expectations and the needs of the CEO continue to grow. The roles they need to play for employees, how they need to be there to support different stakeholders, how flexible they need to be, and the role they're playing in the policy arena, I think is bigger than ever before. So those are two big ones.
You mentioned some audiences. Could you take a step back and go through some of the audiences that are affected? Because I think it's interesting the way that you categorize the types of strategic communications and who would receive that and the responsibility of the CEO and enterprises. So could you detail that a little bit further for us?
Sure. I think the audience question used to feel like a pretty easy one. I spend a lot of my time in-house working at a company. And it used to be, if you're in the comm shop, your audience was maybe your employees. If you're in the IR shop, it was your investors. But it is so much bigger and broader than that now. It is your suppliers. It is your policymakers that are following your issues, especially if you've got employees in there. The level of communications you need with your employees is so much deeper and a critical audience. In addition to your board, your investors, it's just a whole nother level of audiences that all communicators and all businesses need to be thinking about. And I would say that the businesses that are doing this well are when they're not operating in silos and audience groups.
So I guess, what are some of the trends that you're seeing? You touched on a few of them. What are some of the trends in the areas that people are starting to apply this type of communications approach to this year?
So trends are, I think we're seeing more emotion in communications. We're seeing more empathy. We're seeing more not just sticking to dollars and cents communications. Here's where we are for the quarter. Here's where our results are. And then I think we're seeing trends on issues that businesses are confronting in a deeper way than they ever have before. We all see the headlines, right? Whether it's what's going to happen in financial services, in fintech, what's going on with data privacy. But I think one that's maybe catching some businesses by surprise as we're just starting out in 2021 is the acceleration around the climate issues. And it's not just an issue that, for example, oil and gas companies are facing and thinking about. But when you think about this whole overall ESG movement, I think more and more companies, manufacturers, you can name it, are being asked to confront and really talk about climate in a way they've never talked about before. So that's one that really jumps out to me from a specific issue standpoint.
That is an interesting example. Do you have any other top of mind examples with this approach or what you're seeing at clients?
In terms of a specific issue, I think another one that's going to be big for companies across all stakeholder groups, data privacy. And let's talk about that from certainly what is data privacy? How do you manage data? That feels obvious and we see why that's a conversation. But it's an example of an issue, again, that cuts across all stakeholder groups, right? Your investors, that audience wants to make sure you understand this issue, you're doing the right thing, you're not going to get surprised with any lawsuits. Your employees want to know that their information is trusted and safe. Your customers may require different levels of communicating about data privacy issues than they've ever seen before. And then you've got your regulators on top of it. So it's another kind of example of an issue that You have to have the right policies around it. And then you have to have the 360-degree approach on how you're communicating about that issue too.
Well, that will lead me into my last question, which is, you're very experienced. What advice would you give someone who's just starting out their career in strategic communications?
So I have two different, I call it buckets of advice, Judith. One is focus on the fundamentals of communication. I think sometimes people forget how important it is to be a good writer, to be able to synthesize information, to be able to give a compelling argument in a short and succinct way, and to be able to verbally have those same sort of conversations. And I would say communicating is a skill, such an easy analogy, but it takes practice, right? It's like the riding the bike. You got to keep doing it. You can keep improving on it. And don't think because I took a class and got an A in it, I'm a great writer, right? I work on it every single day. And then the second one, I think, especially in this kind of Zoom environment that we're in, is network, but network authentically and deliberately and with kindness. Don't just say I networked today because I did a video call with someone. Think about something that's interesting that you can have a conversation with, how you can follow up with the person, how you can add some value into a story or something that they may think of interest as well.
I like that advice because there's something that I actually learned called the giver's gain model, where, you know, when you think about what someone else needs, right? Be interested, not interesting, which I love the way that that's crystallized, because when people remember that, it becomes very indelible when you're able to think of someone else and think about providing value to them. And I think that becomes, in my world, it would be branding. In your world, it's the strategic communications. But I do think that every interaction gives you an opportunity to help showing your value as your brand. So
yeah, and it shows you're a good human, right? You're thoughtful, yeah. You're able to be strategic, connect dots, and provide that information.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much. Great conversation, really interesting. I will put Sarah's contact information in the comments, but have a great weekend and thank you for joining me, Sarah.
Thanks for having me, Judith. It's great to chat with you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.